I thought it was just another normal day when I found out I needed gallbladder surgery. My fiancée Jessica and I had been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months and planning our wedding. When the doctor told me I needed urgent surgery the same week as her Miami trip with friends, I never expected her response. "Lol. You thought I'd cancel the Miami trip for your surgery," she texted. Stunned, I replied, "My bad." But what the nurse told her when she called the hospital changed everything between us. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever felt taken for granted by someone you loved. I met Jessica at my college roommate's wedding 3 years ago. She caught my eye immediately with her confident laugh and the way she seemed to light up any conversation she joined. I was 32, working as a software developer in Boston, and after a series of disappointing relationships, Jessica seemed like a breath of fresh air. "You should talk to her," my roommate's wife suggested, noticing my interest. "She just moved here from Chicago and barely knows anyone." That night, Jessica and I discovered we shared a love for obscure indie films, spicy food, and hiking the trails of New England. We exchanged numbers and went on our first date the following weekend. 3 months later, we were officially a couple, and the relationship progressed quickly from there. After a year, we moved in together. I remember carrying boxes up to our third-floor apartment, sweating in the summer heat, while Jessica directed where furniture should go. She had an eye for design, transforming our apartment into a stylish and comfortable home within weeks. When my father was diagnosed with pneumonia, that first winter we lived together, Jessica seemed incredibly supportive. She drove with me to visit him in the hospital an hour away, brought him homemade soup, and held my hand during the scary nights when his oxygen levels dropped. I thought I had found someone who would stand by me through anything. The proposal happened on our second anniversary. I planned for weeks, arranging a private sunset boat tour around Boston Harbor. I had the captain stop near the spot where we had our first kiss, and as the city lights began to twinkle in the twilight, I got down on one knee and asked her to marry me. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Jessica squealed, tears in her eyes, as I slipped the ring on her finger. She immediately started taking photos for social media and calling friends and family to share the news. We threw ourselves into wedding planning, with Jessica creating elaborate Pinterest boards and spreadsheets tracking vendors and costs. I was happy to let her take the lead since it clearly brought her joy, though I noticed she rarely asked for my input unless it was about the budget. Looking back now, there were subtle signs of her self-centered behavior that I overlooked. Like when we were supposed to have dinner with my sister Amanda to celebrate her promotion, but Jessica canceled last minute because her friend had surprise tickets to a concert. Or how she would scroll through her phone while I talked about work challenges. Or the time I had a terrible flu, and she stayed at her friend's place for 3 days to avoid getting sick before an important work presentation. But love has a way of blinding you to reality. I made excuses for her behavior, telling myself she was just independent, or that I was being too needy. The health issues started gradually. First, it was just occasional discomfort after eating fatty foods. Then sharper pains began to hit my upper abdomen, sometimes waking me at night. Jessica suggested it was probably just stress from work deadlines or the spicy food I loved. After a particularly bad episode that left me doubled over on the bathroom floor, I finally made a doctor's appointment. Jessica had a spa day planned with friends, so I went alone, expecting to get some antacids and diet advice. Instead, the doctor ordered an ultrasound, immediately concerned by the location and intensity of my pain. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a cold exam room when the doctor returned with a serious expression. "You have severe inflammation of your gallbladder, with multiple gallstones," he explained, showing me the ultrasound images. "One stone is lodged in the bile duct, which is causing the intense pain. We need to remove your gallbladder within the next week. Waiting risks infection, pancreatitis, or even sepsis." I sat there stunned. Surgery, my first ever. The doctor explained the procedure would be laparoscopic, but still required general anesthesia and a hospital stay. Recovery would take at least a week before I could return to work, and I would need someone to help me the first few days after coming home. I drove back to our apartment in a daze, my mind racing with questions and fears. When I arrived, Jessica was in our living room, surrounded by shopping bags, laughing on FaceTime with her college friends. "I got the cutest swimsuits for Miami," she was saying. "We are going to have the best time at that beach club." I had forgotten about her upcoming trip. Jessica and 6 friends from college had been planning a 5-day Miami getaway for months. They had booked a luxury Airbnb near South Beach and planned a packed itinerary of clubs, restaurants, and boat parties. I waited until she finished her call before telling her the news about my gallbladder. As I explained the diagnosis and surgery requirements, I noticed her eyes kept drifting to her phone, lighting up with group chat notifications about the trip. "So when exactly is this surgery happening?" she asked, finally looking up. "The doctor wants to do it this coming Thursday," I said. "I should be home by Friday afternoon if all goes well." Jessica's expression shifted immediately. "This Thursday. But we leave for Miami on Wednesday morning." "I know," I said quietly. "That's why I wanted to talk about it. I'm going to need someone to help me after surgery, at least for the first 2 or 3 days." She stared at me blankly. "Can't you reschedule it for the following week, after I get back?" I explained the risks of waiting, the pain I was in, and the doctor's concerns about complications. But Jessica seemed more focused on the potential disruption to her plans than on my health. "What about your mom? Can she come stay with you?" she suggested. "Mom is in Arizona, caring for Grandma, you know," that I replied, a knot forming in my stomach. "And Amanda has the kids." I thought, "I hoped you might consider postponing your trip. Just for a few days, not canceling entirely." Jessica's face hardened. "Alec, we have been planning this trip for 6 months. Everyone has taken time off work. The Airbnb is paid for. The club reservations were impossible to get. I cannot just not go." We went back and forth for an hour. I tried explaining how anxious I was about the surgery and how much I needed her support. Jessica maintained that gallbladder surgery is routine and that I was making too big a deal about it. The conversation ended unresolved, with Jessica saying she needed time to think and going to take a shower. I sat on our couch feeling more alone than I had in years. The next morning, Jessica left early for work, barely saying goodbye. I had taken the day off to process everything and make arrangements for the surgery. Around noon, I texted her, "I know your trip is important, but this surgery has me really scared. The doctor said there could be complications, especially with the stone location. Having you here would mean everything to me. Is there any way you could delay joining your friends by just 2 to 3 days? I promise I'll be okay on my own after that." Minutes stretched into an hour with no response. Finally, my phone buzzed. I opened her message and felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "Lol. You thought I'd cancel the Miami trip for your surgery. We've been planning this forever. Tracy and Megan already took days off they can't change. You'll be fine. Hospitals have nurses for this stuff." I read the message 5 times, hoping somehow the words would rearrange themselves into something less hurtful. They didn't. With shaking hands, I typed back, the only response I could manage, "My bad." For the next 3 hours, my phone remained silent. I moved through our apartment like a ghost, alternating between disbelief, hurt, and anger. Was this really the woman I planned to spend my life with? Had I completely misjudged her character? Unable to sit with my thoughts any longer, I called my sister, Amanda. Unlike Jessica, she answered on the second ring. "Hey bro, what's up?" Her cheerful voice was such a contrast to what I was feeling that I couldn't immediately respond. "Alec, you there?" "Yeah." I finally managed my voice cracking. "I'm here." Amanda immediately sensed something was wrong, and I found myself telling her everything. The gallbladder diagnosis, the surgery schedule, Jessica's Miami trip, and finally, the devastating text exchange. She said, "What?" Amanda's voice rose in disbelief. "Are you kidding me right now?" That's how she responded, "When you asked for help after surgery." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. Maybe I am being dramatic about a routine procedure. Stop that right now. Amanda interrupted firmly. First, no surgery is routine when you're the one having it. Second, this isn't about the surgery itself. It's about her complete lack of concern for you. I'm coming over. 40 minutes later, Amanda was at my apartment door with a bag of groceries and fierce determination in her eyes. She insisted on staying with me until the surgery and helping with my recovery afterward, waving away my concerns about her kids and work. Tony's got the kids and I can work remotely, she assured me. That's what family does. We show up. Jessica returned home that evening, raising her eyebrows at finding Amanda in our kitchen preparing dinner. "What's going on?" she asked, setting down her purse. "I invited Amanda over," I said simply. "She's going to stay with me during and after the surgery." "Oh." Jessica looked between us. "That's good. So, it's all worked out then." The three of us sat down to what was possibly the most uncomfortable dinner of my life. Amanda kept giving Jessica sharp looks, while Jessica acted as if the text exchange had never happened. When Amanda directly asked Jessica about the trip and my surgery, Jessica became defensive. "It's not like I don't care," she insisted, "but this trip has been planned for months. Everyone is counting on me to be there. Alec will be in the hospital anyway for part of the time, and now he has you to help. It's a perfect solution." "Perfect for whom?" Amanda asked coldly. Jessica's face hardened. "I don't appreciate being made to feel like the villain here. Alec is manipulating the situation to make me choose between him and something important to me." "Important to you," I finally spoke up. "We're talking about surgery, Jessica, not a dentist appointment I can reschedule." "See? This is exactly what I mean," Jessica said, pushing her plate away. "You're using this to test me or control me. Plenty of people have gallbladder surgery without their partners holding their hand." The argument escalated from there, with Jessica eventually storming off to the guest room, claiming I was being dramatic and that Amanda was turning me against her. As the bedroom door slammed, Amanda and I sat in stunned silence. "Is she always like this?" Amanda finally asked. I wanted to defend Jessica, to say this was unusual behavior brought on by stress or disappointment about her trip. But as I thought about it, I realized this was actually a pattern I had been ignoring. Jessica often prioritized her wants over my needs, just never quite this blatantly before. "I don't know what to think anymore," I admitted. The morning of my surgery arrived under a cloud of tension. Jessica was leaving for Miami that same day, her flight scheduled for 10:30 a.m. My hospital check-in was at 1:10 a.m. for a 1:00 p.m. surgery. Jessica moved around our bedroom, efficiently packing last-minute items into her suitcase while I sat on the edge of the bed, in my comfortable clothes, ready for the hospital. "I put some microwave meals in the freezer," she said, not looking at me. "And there are protein shakes in the pantry for when you're feeling up to it." "Thanks," I replied, watching her fold a bright bikini into her case. When it was time to leave, Jessica paused by the door, finally meeting my eyes. "Good luck with the surgery. Try not to call unless it's an emergency. Cell reception can be spotty at the beach club, and we have a pretty packed schedule." With that, she kissed my cheek quickly and was gone, the sound of her rolling suitcase fading down the hallway. Amanda arrived 20 minutes later to drive me to the hospital. During check-in, the nurse asked about emergency contacts and support at home. His sister Amanda interjected when I hesitated. "I'll be staying with him." The nurse smiled warmly, but I noticed her curious glance when Amanda added, "His fiancée is on vacation in Miami." As they prepared me for surgery, my anxiety increased. This was my first time under general anesthesia, and despite the doctor's assurances about the procedure being common, I was terrified. Amanda stayed by my side, holding my hand and cracking jokes to distract me. "Remember when we were kids and you convinced me that if I swallowed watermelon seeds they'd grow in my stomach," she reminisced. "Well, now they're actually going in to check for those watermelons." I managed a weak laugh, grateful for her presence. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took effect was wondering if Jessica had made it to Miami yet, and if she was thinking about me at all. I woke up disoriented, a dull pain throbbing across my abdomen. The recovery room was dimly lit, and a nurse was adjusting something on the monitor beside my bed. As awareness returned, so did the pain, sharper now. "Welcome back," the nurse said kindly. "The doctor will be in shortly to talk to you. There were some complications during surgery." Those words sent a spike of fear through me. Complications. The very thing I had been worried about. Doctor Patel arrived a few minutes later, explaining that what should have been a straightforward procedure had become more complex. The inflammation was worse than the scans had indicated, and they had discovered an additional stone that had caused minor damage to the common bile duct. We were able to repair everything, he assured me, but the surgery took longer than anticipated, about 3 hours instead of 1. "Your recovery might be a bit more difficult with more pain and a slightly longer healing time." Amanda was allowed in shortly after. The worry on her face shifted to relief when she saw me conscious. "You've been out a long time," she said, squeezing my hand. "How do you feel?" "Like someone played football with my insides," I admitted, wincing as I tried to adjust my position. As the anesthesia wore off completely, the pain intensified. The nurses administered medication through my IV, explaining they needed to keep me overnight for observation because of the complications. All I could think was that Jessica wouldn't even know about any of this until much later. When I was finally settled in a hospital room, I checked my phone to find a single text from Jessica's surgery done yet. No inquiry about how I was feeling, if everything went okay, or any expression of concern. Just a question that felt more like checking a box than genuine interest. Amanda saw my expression change as I read the message. "What did she say?" she asked, unable to hide the edge in her voice. I showed her the text, and she muttered something under her breath that I couldn't quite catch, but definitely included the word unbelievable. The evening passed slowly. The pain medication made me drift in and out of sleep, while Amanda remained in the uncomfortable chair beside my bed, working on her laptop and occasionally helping me sip water or adjust my position. The night shift brought a new nurse named Sarah, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an efficient manner. She checked my vitals regularly, adjusted my pain medication, and seemed genuinely concerned about my comfort. "First surgery?" she asked during one of her checks. I nodded. "And your fiancé is in Miami?" she continued, having clearly been briefed by the day staff. "Yeah," I replied, not wanting to get into the whole story. Sarah gave me a long look but said nothing more, simply patting my arm before continuing her rounds. Around 10:30 p.m., the hospital room phone rang. Sarah answered it, introducing herself as my nurse. "Yes, he's here," she said to the caller, looking over at me. "He's resting now. The surgery had complications, so he'll be staying overnight for observation. Yes, there was additional damage found that wasn't visible on the initial scans. No visiting hours are over, but his sister has been authorized to stay. I can give him a message when he wakes." She listened for another moment. Then her tone shifted slightly, becoming more formal. "Ma'am, I've been a surgical nurse for 22 years, and I can tell you that there's no such thing as a routine gallbladder surgery. Every patient is different and complications happen. Your fiancé had a stone damage his bile duct, requiring additional repair. He's in considerable pain and will need significant support during the first week of recovery. Yes, I understand you're concerned. No, it's not an emergency, but it is serious surgery. I'll let him know you called." Sarah hung up and turned to me, realizing I was awake and had heard the entire conversation. "Your fiancé," she said, simply checking my IV. Less than 20 minutes later, my cell phone rang. It was Jessica. "Why didn't you tell me there were complications?" she demanded without preamble. "Hello to you too," I replied wearily. "I'm doing okay, thanks for asking." There was a pause before Jessica's tone changed completely. "I'm sorry, Alec. I was just worried when the nurse said there were complications." "Are you really okay?" "I've been better," I admitted. "They had to repair my bile duct. I'm staying overnight." "Oh my God," Jessica said. and to my surprise, her voice cracked like she might be crying. "I feel terrible. Everyone's posting beach pictures and people keep asking where you are. Lauren saw my post about being in Miami and commented asking if you were feeling better after surgery. I didn't even know what to say." And there it was. The real reason for her concern. Not my well-being, but social embarrassment. Our mutual friends were questioning why she was partying in Miami while I was having surgery, and it made her look bad. "What did you tell them?" I asked, a strange calm settling over me. "I said there were complications and I might need to come back early," she replied. "I can fly back tomorrow, if you need me to." Tomorrow, not tonight. Note immediately. Tomorrow, after she had enjoyed at least one full day of her precious Miami trip. "Don't bother," I said quietly. "Amanda's here. I'm covered." "Are you sure?" "Because I could." She trailed off, clearly relieved by my response. "I'm sure," I said, a weightlifting as I made the decision. "Enjoy your trip, Jessica." After we hung up, I looked at Amanda, who had pretended to be asleep during the call, but clearly heard everything. "I think I just realized something important," I told her. She opened her eyes. "What's that?" "I don't think I can marry someone who sees me as an inconvenience." The hospital discharged me the next afternoon with prescriptions for pain medication and antibiotics, strict instructions about diet and activity, and a follow-up appointment scheduled for the following week. Instead of going back to the apartment I shared with Jessica, Amanda took me to her house. "Tony already set up the guest room for you," she said as we drove. "And the kids are excited to have Uncle Alex staying over." 3 days into my stay at Amanda's, Jessica returned from Miami. She had cut her trip short by only 1 day, not the original 5 she had planned. She arrived at Amanda's doorstep with a gift bag from the Miami airport and an arrangement of flowers. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her eyes widening slightly at my appearance. I had lost weight. My skin was still jaundiced from the bile duct issues, and moving around was clearly painful. "Better than yesterday," I replied honestly. Jessica launched into what sounded like a rehearsed apology full of, "I feel terrible, and I should have been there" statements. Not once did she ask about my experience or acknowledge the hurt her actions had caused. Her entire focus was on her feelings of guilt and how difficult the situation had been for her. As she spoke, a moment of perfect clarity washed over me. This wasn't new behavior. This was who Jessica had always been. I had just been too in love to see it clearly. When she finally paused for breath, I spoke quietly. "Why did you really come back early, Jessica?" She blinked, thrown off script. "What do you mean?" "For you, obviously." "No," I shook my head slowly. "I think you came back because our friends were judging you for being in Miami while I was in surgery. You came back for your reputation, not for me." Her face flushed. "That's not fair. How can you say that after I cut my trip short by 1 day, Jessica? After you found out there were complications. After people started asking questions." What followed was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. I pointed out pattern after pattern of her self-centered behavior throughout our relationship while she alternated between defensiveness and tears. When she ran out of excuses, she resorted to bringing up wedding plans and how much money we'd lose by canceling. "I need some space," I finally told her. "I'm staying here until I recover physically and emotionally." Jessica's reaction cycled rapidly through disbelief, anger, and bargaining. She left that day with threats about the wedding venue deposit and vague comments about how I'd regret pushing her away. Over the following days, her tactics evolved. First came angry texts, accusing me of being ungrateful and influenced by my sister. When those went unanswered, she shifted to love bombing, sending gifts and heartfelt messages about how much she missed me and how she'd do anything to make things right. During my physical recovery, I also began seeing a therapist initially to process the trauma of the surgery, but quickly focusing on the relationship dynamics with Jessica. Dr. Martin helped me see how I had ignored red flags because I wanted so badly to believe I had found the one. "Relationships aren't about never making mistakes," she told me during one session. "They're about how we respond when we inevitably do. Does your partner center their needs or yours during a crisis?" 2 weeks after surgery, when I could move without wincing, and the incision sites were healing well, I asked Jessica to meet me at a coffee shop near Amanda's house. She arrived looking hopeful, clearly believing this was a reconciliation meeting. I placed the engagement ring on the table between us. "I can't marry you, Jessica," I said gently but firmly, not because of the Miami trip itself, but because of what it revealed about us, about you, about me for accepting less than I deserve. Her face crumpled, but even in that moment her first words were about herself. "How could you do this to me? After all we've planned. What will I tell everyone?" "That's exactly what I'm talking about," I replied. "Even now, your first concern is how this affects you, not us." Jessica tried every emotional lever she knew: tears, anger, guilt, even attempting to minimize my surgery again, as not that serious. When nothing worked, she finally resorted to cold fury. "You'll regret this," she said, grabbing the ring. "Good luck finding someone who puts up with your neediness." As she stormed out, I felt none of the devastation I had expected. Instead, there was only relief, like my emotional gallbladder had also been removed, taking with it years of accumulated toxicity I hadn't even recognized was poisoning me. My physical recovery paralleled my emotional healing. Each day brought less pain and more clarity about what I wanted in a relationship. Amanda and my friends formed a support network that showed me what genuine care looked like. They brought meals, drove me to follow-up appointments, and never once made me feel like I was imposing. Surprisingly, Nurse Sarah reached out through the hospital's patient follow-up program, checking how my recovery was progressing. We began talking regularly, first about my healing process, then about life in general. Her perspective as someone who dealt with vulnerability daily was invaluable. "In my job, I see people at their most vulnerable," she told me, over coffee 6 weeks after my surgery. "You learn quickly who shows up and who makes excuses. The people who truly care are the ones who sit in uncomfortable chairs all night just to make sure you're not alone." As months passed, I moved into my own apartment, rediscovering independence I had compromised in my relationship with Jessica. She occasionally attempted to reconnect, especially after finding out through mutual friends that I was dating again, but I maintained firm boundaries. A year after the surgery, I found myself feeling grateful for the experience that had ultimately saved me from more than health problems. It had saved me from a lifetime with someone who would always put herself first, even in my moments of greatest need. I learned to take relationships, slowly paying attention to how potential partners handled minor inconveniences and whether they showed genuine interest in my well-being. I began to recognize the difference between people who performed care for social credit and those who provided it simply because they valued me. Sarah became an important friend who helped me recognize authentic care. Her matter-of-fact assessment of Jessica during that hospital phone call had been the first domino in a chain of realizations that ultimately led to my freedom. 2 years later, I'm healthy, happy, and in a much better place emotionally. The scars from my surgery have faded to thin white lines barely visible, unless you know where to look. The emotional scars have similarly healed, leaving behind not pain but wisdom. I learned that crisis reveals true character both in others and in ourselves. Jessica showed who she truly was when faced with a choice between her wants and my needs. But I also discovered my own worth and capacity for self-respect when I finally chose my well-being over a painful relationship. The most important lesson I took from the experience was to trust people who show up when it's difficult, not just when it's convenient. Sometimes the most valuable thing we can remove from our lives isn't a malfunctioning organ, but relationships that don't serve our well-being. Have you ever had someone show their true colors during a crisis? Comment below with your experience. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more real-life journeys. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message about valuing themselves, share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve people who choose to be there, especially when it's hard.